we will be looking at all of my song, and we are going to discuss the plot of the play and also discuss act by act analysis of the play. So looking at the play, we saw that at the beginning of the play, we saw a group of people discussing. We saw the Keller family. So the summary of the play is Joe Keller, who is a businessman and lives with his family. Grace Keller, Kate Keller, wishes to hand over the business of the family to his son when he grows old, and he is very concerned about the family business and does not want anything that would temper or lead to the retrogression or decline in the advancement of the business. So we saw that in the play he sold crackhead of cylinders to the Army Air Force, and that led to the death of about 21 people. And as a result of that guiltiness, his own son also decide to take his life. His son Larry decided to take his life because of what his father has done. Though his father was convicted, and in the appeal he was acquitted by shifting the blame to his partner called Steve Diva. So Steve Diva was in prison, and we saw that Keller was released. So he claimed that he was having flu, he was having a sickness, flu, a form of fever, at the time when the crack 40 cylinder head were sold to the Army Air Force. But we discovered later that it was untrue when Judge Diva visited the Keller family, and Kate Keller informed him that Joe have not sick for over a year and a half. So that brought a lot of suspicion, and then we saw that the judge began to suspect that the claim and the defense of Joe Keller was a fraudulent act, and he lied against his father, Steve Diva, to get free, and then Steve Diva get imprisoned. So we also saw that marriage between Larry and Anne could not hold because Larry committed suicide, though the mother was not aware that he has committed suicide, and he was also expecting that Larry will still return one day. And as a result of that, the relationship that was developing between Chris and Anne, the mother opposed it and never wanted any relationship between both of them because she was expecting Larry to still come back, and she regarded Anne as the woman of Larry, and it would be unfortunate and can lead to family scattering if Larry returns and discover that his woman has been taken away by his brother. So we saw such situation, and we discovered that the mother never wanted them to get married. So that is just a brief summary of the play. And then at the end of the play, we saw that even Keller committed suicide because he was out of guiltiness and never wanted people to have knowledge of what transpired between him and Steve Diva and the Air Forces that led to the death of 21 pilots. So we are going to be looking at it act by act. So in Act 1, Scene 1, we saw that Kellers, who have new neighbors now, since the divas no longer live with them, chat with friends. One of the neighbors is Jim, a medical doctor who wanted to go into research, but he was not able to go because he does not have the financial means to take care of his family and take care of his education. Then we saw another neighbor at the beginning of the Act 1, a neighbor called Frank, who is into horoscope. He's a superstitious man. And then both of them and Chris were discussing about the fallen tree which was planted in memory of Larry. So as they were discussing, we saw that Joe Keller joined them later, and later the mother also came, and the mother Kate Keller came and also discovered that the tree has fallen and was so sorrowful. Then we saw Chris and Frank began to console her, calming her down that the tree can grow again or another can be planted in memory of Larry. So they also received the call and the news that Anne Diva, who is the fiancée or the girl of Larry, that he will be visiting. So the visitation does not go down well with the mother Kate, because she was thinking that her coming have an ulterior motive other than her relationship with Larry. So we saw that both Frank and Chris were also hoping, after Frank did some horoscope and discovered that Larry is still alive. So we also saw in the continuation of Act 1 that they discuss about the tree, and they do not want to break the heart of Kate. So we saw that Chris informed about his intention of marrying Anne. Now Chris informed the mother that he is in love with Anne and wished to marry Anne. But the mother opposed it vehemently, hoping that the son is still going to return. So she doesn't know that the son is dead. And the coming of Anna, the visitation of Anne came with later a suicide letter from Larry, but never revealed it to the mother of Larry, Kate, at that time. So Kate was opposed to the relationship between Anne and Chris because of her expectation that Larry will still come back. So we saw that Anne entered the scene. Then a short while Anne entered for the visitation, and then they talked briefly about her father Steve, who is still in jail. Note that in this Act 1, the father is already in jail. The father of Anne, which is a Steve Diva. And that brought a lot of trauma and psychological disturbance to Anne and even to George, the son of Steve Diva. So they discuss about it, but Anne does not want to discuss about the situation much because she thought that it would bring a lot of shame and disgrace to the family. So we saw that Joe does not want to criticize Steve. Joe, who is primarily responsible for the situation, does not want to criticize Steve because he knows what actually transpired. He just that through connection and lying, he was able to bring up a defense that led to his being acquitted. So we saw that the plane crashed and the people died. And then at 2, we saw that the Kellers, later that day, the Kellers and Anne greet George. Now, George informed them that he will be coming after visiting his father in the prison, and then he will come to visit the Keller family. So his visitation to the prison convinces him that his father was not directly responsible for the death of the pilot. Therefore, he questioned and queried Joe Keller for masterminding his father's imprisonment. So he asked Anne not to marry Chris because that will bring a lot of disgrace. Marrying the son of someone who lied against your father and your father is put in prison, who ruin your family, and you marry his son, it is not good enough according to George. And that was why he ensured that Anne does not marry Chris. But we saw that Chris cajoled George into believing that his father was not just clutching on straw and blaming others to hide his own guilt. George calms down. Chris was trying to persuade him, and then he calms down. Chris was still trying to convince him that his father was not responsible for the imprisonment of his father, of George's father. So we also saw that over the meal, so they told him to wait for me, and he waited. And over the meal, Kate now revealed that Joe has not been sick for over a year and a half. That brought a lot of suspicion because George began to suspect that the defense of Joe Keller in the court was fraudulent. For him to claim that he was sick and he was not the one transacting at the time when the crackhead of cylinders were sold to the Air Force. And now the wife revealed that he has not been sick for a year and a half. So that enraged George very well, and he causes Chris to ask him to leave the house. So because of that suspicion and anger that broke out, Chris now asks George to leave their house instead of causing problem to them. So at the same time, Kate, the mother of Chris, brought out the belongings of Anne, that Anne should go with her brother George. But we discover that Chris does not want Anne to go because of the relationship between both of them. So we also saw that in the continuation of that act, Chris confronts his parent, his mother, Kate, argue for Larry's life. Now, Chris wanted to tell the mother that Larry is no longer alive and she should leave both him and Anne to go on with their relationship. But you see, the mother was still hoping because the mother knew that the crackhead of the cylinders sold by the husband was responsible for the death of the pilot. And he believes that Larry was not in the plane, in any of the plane that crashed. And the husband, Joe, also argues that Larry was not part of the planes that took off and crashed. So the mother was still hoping that Larry, being a war veteran, might have been to one place or the other and will return at a particular time, which Chris does not buy that idea and was telling the mother that Larry has died, Larry may not return, but the mother still wishes and hoping that Larry will return. So we saw that Chris says that even if Joe did not cause his son's death, he was still responsible for the death of other pilots who were like his own son. No, Joe is surprised by Chris' lamentation and break into tears of incurable remorse. So Chris lives in discourse. This time Chris left, and in Act 3 we saw that it was already night, and Chris, when he left in Act 2, he has not returned. And Kate was waiting for him anxiously. Even Anne was waiting for him. And we saw that Anna brought out a letter and handed it over to Kate. Then Kate began to read the letter. The letter tells about the guilt that Larry felt about reading his father's crime and the fact that he was going to take his own life to end the pain. He knew that the father was responsible for the death of the 21 pilots, and he was so disappointed that his father could do such a thing. And the trauma and the guilt, going among the armies in the war, in the Second World War, and then be accused of his father responsible for the death of our 21 professionals, pilots. That would be a very traumatic experience. And as a result of that, he wishes to take his life instead of facing the guilt, facing the accusation, facing the blame every now and then from neighbors, from fellow soldiers, from other pilots, that his father is responsible for the death of their colleague. So we saw that when the mother was reading, then Chris enters the house and he declared that he had decided to leave his family as he could no longer face his own father, because even the body language of neighbors shows that his father was responsible for the act, And then we saw that Chris expresses no intention of jailing his own father, though he cannot marry Anne again. So we saw that he believes that Anne will forever resent him, will forever hate him, because his father, Keller, was responsible for Anne's father's imprisonment. And then Anne asserted that she did not want that to happen, and then hands him Larry's suicide note. Now, the letter he gave to Kate, he now handed over to Chris also. And then when Chris read it before his father, who now knows that his greed and misdeeds led to his son's suicide, he blames himself. That is, Joe Keller now blames himself for the death of the pilot who died, and confesses his desire to come clean to the police. Now, he goes into his room, which is Joe Keller, and they were hoping that he is coming back, and Kate was telling Chris not to imprison his father, not to report his father to the police. And then they heard suddenly a gunshot, and when they enter, they discover that Joe Keller has committed suicide. He has killed himself. So we saw that Kate now asks his son Chris that the situation should not stop his life, and he should not drop any blame on his father. And we also saw that okay, that was the end of the play. Joe Keller died, and then the wife lives in regret, and it was like a nemesis for what he has done, for him being responsible for the death of others. Not that he was responsible for the death of the 21 pilot, and then the death of his son Larry, making it 22, and also he was responsible for the imprisonment of Steve Diva. So in our next video, we'll be looking at the themes in the play. We'll be looking at the themes, we'll be discussing the characters and also the characterization. We'll be looking at all the characters: Steve, Diva, George, and Joe Keller, Kate Keller, Chris, Larry, Jim, Frank, and other characters, and the roles they play. So subscribe to the channel so that when the videos on the themes and characters are uploaded, you will get notified. And make sure you click the notification bell so that you will continue to get notified when new videos are uploaded.